Welcome to Stories by Rushik podcast.
So glad to be here.
Okay, so I want you to think about the very last time you kept score in a relationship.
Oh, boy.
Right. Seriously, pull up that mental tally right now. You know exactly the one I mean.
We all have one.
We do. It's that voice going, well, I emptied the dishwasher this morning, so, you owe me a foot rub tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Or I compromised on that awful television show last night, so I definitely get to pick the restaurant for dinner.
The classic transactional ledger.
Exactly. The ledger. And we're constantly taught that this kind of ledger is, well, healthy. We're told that drawing these hard lines and keeping things perfectly balanced is basically the key to a modern functional relationship.
It's all about equity, right? That's what we're told.
Right. But today, we are unpacking a piece of writing that essentially asks us to completely burn that ledger.
Burn it to the ground. And honestly, it is such a wildly refreshing perspective. I'm so excited for this.
Me too. So today we are exploring some really beautiful excerpts from a larger work called The Boundless Rhythm of Us. And specifically, we're looking at a piece titled, I'll Never Draw a Line in Loving You.
Such a striking title.
It really is.
Yeah.
And if you are familiar with the material penned by Rushik, you already know about his distinct wit.
Oh, absolutely.
You know about his thought leadership when it comes to the incredibly messy, really beautiful nuances of human connection. Because he has this totally rare ability to take feelings that are usually just vaguely floating around in our heads.
It's just sort of nebulous concepts.
Yeah, nebulous concepts. And he pins them down onto the page with absolute precision.
He really does. And I think our mission for this session isn't just to, read a poem and admire the pretty phrasing. We're actually here to explore a truly radical concept of love.
Radical is the right word for it, yeah.
Because we are going to look at love not as a contract, not as a transaction, and certainly not as a rigid set of rules. Instead, we're looking at love as an expansive, entirely unmeasured landscape.
An unmeasured landscape. I love that phrasing so much.
Right. But the thing is, to understand how you even begin to exist in an unmeasured landscape, we have to start with the environment. You can't just snap your fingers and be there.
Exactly, because before you can break down the emotional walls, you really have to set the physical stage.
You have to build the container for it.
Right. And the author starts by painting a very, very specific picture. He writes about the sky outside changing colors, and he describes it, quote, like a canvas catching the last light of a quiet evening.
It's just incredibly evocative.
It is.
And it's not just pretty imagery for the sake of it, The physical setting is doing a massive amount of heavy lifting here.
That I mean.
Well, his unique perspective on environment is that the physical mirrors the emotional state by deliberately softening that external world the noise, the demands, the literal bright lights of the day. He's creating this really necessary vacuum.
A vacuum. Yes, that idea is just so crucial. When I was, prepping for this and thinking about this imagery, the quiet twilight that slows the world down, the routine fading when the candles are lit, it actually felt to me like he is describing an emotional sensory deprivation tank.
Oh, wow. That is a fantastic way to frame it, an emotional sensory deprivation tank.
Right, because think about the baseline of our modern lives. You, me, the listener out there, we are just constantly bombarded.
Relentlessly.
Yes, we have our phones pinging with urgent work emails at 8 o'clock at night. We have the endless hum of traffic outside our windows, the constant barrage of the news cycle.
The doom scrolling.
Just the sheer exhausting noise of just existing in the world today. We don't naturally just relax anymore. We don't naturally find silence.
We really don't. It's almost unnatural to be quiet now.
Exactly. So to turn a normal, everyday living room into a sanctuary, it requires a deliberate, almost, aggressive transition.
Yeah, you have to fight for it.
You do. You literally have to sever the connection to the outside. You light the candles, you watch the twilight, you actively let the routine fade away.
And the silence, at least in the context he is writing about, it isn't just the absence of noise, it's an active presence.
Well, that's a good distinction.
Yeah, because closeness doesn't just happen by accident while you are, simultaneously scrolling through social media and half watching some sitcom in the background.
Right. You're not actually connecting there.
Not at all. The sanctuary he is describing isn't necessarily a physical place with expensive curated furniture. It's an atmospheric shift. It's the intentional decision to look at each other and say, well, the demands of the day are over, and now we're shifting into a completely different mode of being.
You need that clearing of the stage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need it for true vulnerability to even have the space to appear. If the stage is cluttered, vulnerability can't walk on.
But this is where it gets really interesting. The sensory deprivation tank of a quiet room is really just the prerequisite, isn't it?
It is. It's just step one.
Right, because once the noise stops, once the world is safely shut out, that's when the walls between two people actually have the space to come down. Which brings us to the core lines of the poem itself.
Let's hear them.
Okay, so he writes, "I'll never draw a line in loving you, in taking care of you, in appreciating you, in supporting you."
I mean, that is a massive, sweeping declaration.
It's huge.
And he expands on this so beautifully in the prose, too. He writes that true closeness is found in what he calls the unmeasured spaces.
The unmeasured spaces.
Yeah, he says it exists in shared glances across a crowded room, or the quiet assurance of a hand held during a silent drive, and the ease of long silences that feel entirely full.
Okay, wait. I have to hit the brakes right here.
Oh, what is it?
Because my brain is screaming red alert, and I bet a lot of listeners are sitting in their cars or at the gym feeling the exact same way.
Okay, lay it on me.
So, pop psychology, internet therapists, best-selling self-help books, literally everything we consume right now tells us that drawing lines is the single most important thing you can possibly do for your mental health.
Oh, right. Boundaries.
Boundaries. Protect your peace, guard your energy, set firm boundaries. We are taught that if you don't draw a line, you're just going to get taken advantage of.
That you're entering toxic codependency territory.
Exactly. So when the author explicitly says, "I'll never draw a line," how on earth do we square that? I mean, are we just supposed to completely abandon our individuality and be doormats?
It's a terrifying thought, isn't it? Because you're totally right. Our cultural reflex right now is extremely defensive.
Extreme.
And for good reason. I mean, people want to protect themselves from bad situations. But we have to distinguish between a boundary that protects you from harm and a boundary that simply measures transactions.
Okay, talk to me about that difference.
Well, look closely at the exact prose he uses to reframe this concept. He isn't advocating for losing your identity, and he definitely isn't saying you should accept mistreatment.
Right.
He writes, "Love is not a series of boundaries or carefully calculated balances." And I think that right there is a uniquely Rushic insight.
The calculated balances.
Exactly. He is rejecting the carefully calculated balances.
Ah, the ledger we talked about at the start.
Bingo. Because modern love has become highly transactional for so many people, it's literally a spreadsheet.
It really is. It's like, well, I paid for dinner on Tuesday, so you owe me drinks on Friday.
Yep. Or, I went to your family's house for the holidays, so you owe me a weekend away with my friends.
It's a constant tit for tat to ensure everything is perfectly mathematically equitable.
Which is absolutely exhausting to live that way.
So exhausting. You're always auditing your own relationship.
Yes, you're like a tax collector in your own home. You're always waiting for the other person to balance the books.
And if they don't, resentment builds up instantly.
Because when you are constantly drawing lines to measure who is giving more, you are creating walls. You are inherently treating your partner like a potential adversary who might shortchange you at any moment.
Wow, an adversary. That's so true.
And what the author is saying is that true love is an expansive landscape. You simply exist in it without needing to aggressively define where your effort ends and theirs begins.
So it's not a negotiation.
No, it's not. Think about those unmeasured spaces he mentions, like the silent drive or the shared glance. There is zero scorekeeping there. You aren't calculating the emotional equity of holding someone's hand in the car.
Right. You're not like, I've been holding your hand for 5 minutes, now it's your turn to hold mine.
Exactly. You are just experiencing it. You're just living in that space.
Okay, I really see the distinction you're making now. It's the difference between building a fence to keep out a predator versus building a fence right down the middle of your own living room just to make sure your partner doesn't take up too much space on the rug.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Because you don't need a defensive perimeter when you're standing in a sanctuary.
Precisely. If you are constantly drawing lines, you are unconsciously preparing for a battle. He is describing the peace treaty.
A peace treaty in the unmeasured spaces. Man, I really like that.
It changes everything when you view it that way.
It does. But, okay, here's my next question.
Go for it.
If love isn't maintained by drawing those defensive lines, and it isn't maintained by keeping a strict ledger of who did what, how is it maintained?
Right, because it doesn't just run on magic.
Exactly. Relationships don't just run on autopilot. They require actual upkeep. So how does he say we do it?
Well, the writer gives us the answer almost immediately. It is maintained through shared rituals and unspoken languages.
Yes. Okay. Let's talk about the wine.
Let's talk about the wine.
Because in the poem, he mentions the really simple act of, quote, drinking together those bottles of wine. And it's followed by this incredibly comforting reassurance where he says, we are together and everything's fine.
It's such a warm sentiment.
But in the prose, he elevates this significantly. He describes the pouring of a glass of ruby liquid as a ritual of appreciation.
I love that phrase, ritual of appreciation. Notice how he takes an incredibly ordinary, frankly mundane act, just pouring a glass of wine at the end of a long Tuesday, and he transforms it into something sacred.
It's not just having a drink.
No, it isn't about the alcohol at all. It's about the intentionality behind the pour.
Right, because he says that each sip carries the warmth of years spent building a shared language, one that requires no translation.
Yeah.
And that it brings this light laughter that makes every external worry disappear entirely.
The concept of a shared language with no translation is just brilliant. Because think about the massive cognitive load of early relationships.
Oh, it's absolutely brutal.
It is.
Do you know what the exhaustion of having to translate yourself feels like?
Tell me.
It is exactly like trying to connect to the internet in 1998 using a dial-up modem.
Oh my gosh, the horrible screeching noises.
Yes, exactly. The screeching, the static, the waiting for it to connect. When you are constantly having to over-explain your feelings to a partner, or like justify your reactions, or ensure they totally understand your tone, you are running on dial-up.
That is so accurate.
You say one thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you have spent 20 minutes providing backstory and context, just hoping they don't misinterpret the little emotional data packet you just sent over.
It's glitchy.
It's so glitchy. It lags. The connection drops half the time. It's a mess.
And you are terrified someone is going to pick up the landline in the other room and ruin the whole download.
Yes. You have to start all over again. But what he is describing here, this shared language with no translation, is the ultimate upgrade.
Fiber optic connection.
It is a seamless, unspoken fiber optic connection. You don't have to over-explain a single thing. You just look at each other, and a massive amount of understanding is transferred instantly. Zero buffering. Zero static.
That is a perfect analogy, truly. And I think what's important to remember is that that fiber optic connection doesn't just install itself overnight.
No, definitely not.
The writer explicitly mentions the years spent building it. The ritual of the ruby liquid is, in his words, an anchor against the moving world.
An anchor.
Yeah, because when the outside world is chaotic, returning to this simple, established ritual reminds you of the solid ground you have built together. The understanding grows strongest not in the grand, cinematic, dramatic declarations, but in the micro moments.
The Tuesday nights.
Exactly. A poured glass, a very specific look across the room, a light laugh that only the two of you understand.
Which really brings us to the culmination of all this effort, I think.
It does.
Because the creation of the Twilight Sanctuary, shutting the world out, and the terrifying vulnerability of erasing your ledgers, well, plus the years spent laying down that fiber optic cable for your shared language, it all points toward one single grounding focal point.
The emotional center of the whole piece.
Right. So he writes in the poem, this is just a note, again for a remembrance, your smile is our life and the reason for our existence.
It's beautiful.
And in the prose, he describes looking across the table at this person, and suddenly, everything feels perfectly still. The smile acts as a constant light.
And what is so powerful about this synthesis, I think, is that he isn't pretending the outside world has magically vanished forever.
Right, he's not delusional.
No, he explicitly notes that the world continues to spin on its axis. The chaos hasn't actually stopped.
The mortgage still needs to be paid.
The stressful jobs still exist. The alarming headlines are still out there on our phones.
The world is still doing its terrifying, chaotic, spinning thing.
Exactly. But because of this immense closeness they've cultivated, that external chaos becomes, in his words, completely separate and beautifully distant.
Beautifully distant.
Yeah. That smile across the table doesn't act like some magical sci-fi force field that literally deflects the world. It acts more like an emotional gyroscope.
Oh, wait, explain that. I really like the idea of a gyroscope.
Okay, so think about how a gyroscope works in, like, an airplane or a spacecraft.
Okay, yeah.
No matter how violently the vehicle is spinning or tilting or being battered by external forces, the gyroscope in the center remains perfectly stable. It remains perfectly level.
It keeps the balance.
It maintains the core orientation of the ship. So when he writes about looking at this person and everything feeling perfectly still, that's what is happening psychologically.
The smile is the gyroscope.
The smile is the gyroscope. The world is tilting wildly around you, the turbulence is real, but your internal gravity is completely centered because of this connection.
Wow. I want you, the listener, to really picture that for a second. Think about how flawlessly he captures that highly, highly specific moment.
We've all felt it if we're lucky.
You are sitting across a table from someone you love. Maybe there's a half-empty bottle of wine between you. The lighting is soft. You have had a long, really battering week.
Just exhausted.
And you just look up, you catch their eye, and they smile. And for a split second, the gravity of the entire earth just shifts. Everything is perfectly still.
It's magic.
The noise of your commute, your boss's angry emails, all those anxieties of the future, they are all still out there, spinning violently, but they simply cannot touch you in that sanctuary.
Because it is the absolute reassurance that as long as this closeness remains, your orientation is safe. The smile is the tangible proof that the vulnerability you risked was totally worth it.
It proves the unmeasured space is safe.
Yes. You realize you don't need a ledger. You don't need to calculate who gave more effort that day or who won the dumb argument about the groceries yesterday. The gyroscope is spinning. The smile is enough.
It really makes all that defensive posturing seem so small, doesn't it? Like when you actually achieve that stillness, the idea of keeping score just feels completely absurd.
It feels like a waste of energy.
It does. So how do we take this philosophy of the unmeasured space and actually apply it to our own lives today?
Well, I think the most valuable thing we can do is turn this challenge inward. I want to leave you, the listener, with something to mull over long after you finish listening today.
A little homework.
A little homework, yeah. Think about your own close relationships. And this could be a romantic partner, a lifelong friend, or a family member.
Anyone you're close to.
Right. Where are you currently keeping a calculated balance? Where is your hidden mental spreadsheet?
Ouch. That's a tough question.
It is. Are you keeping score of who texted first? Or who initiated the last plan? Or maybe who compromised more last week?
We all do it.
We do. But ask yourself, what would actually happen if you deliberately chose to stop drawing that line?
Just put the pen down.
Put it down. What if you embraced the terror of the unmeasured spaces, stopped calculating the emotional math, and just allowed yourself to believe that you are together and everything is fine?
Burn the ledger and step into the unmeasured space. It is terrifying, sure, but clearly it is where the absolute magic lives. Thank you for listening to Stories by Ruchik podcast. For more such podcasts, follow Stories by Ruchik on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Prime Music, and YouTube.